Well, for more on the story, we are joined now by Chip Rowley. He is a senior analyst at Political Research Associates and the co-author of Right-Wing Populism in America, Too Close for Comfort. Welcome to Democracy Now! Chip Rowley, what would you add right now to this piece this very chilling piece that we've just watched? You've spent time in Montana, in Idaho. What would you like to add?
Well, I think we need to get away from the idea of the word extremism because it creates the false impression that what is going on here is just somewhere way out there among crazy people. But the whole point of this documentary is to say, look, there are these sectors. There's the center political sector, there's these right-wing populists, and then there's these insurgent and revolutionary right-wing, Klan Nazi people. And there's a dynamic there that we are part of, all of us in America, a legacy of racism that can be exploited on the racial fault line at any moment. So people need to understand that this dynamic is not going to result in the Klan or the Nazis taking over America and having an armed coup. What it's going to result in is a dynamic between the Republicans and the Democrats, for sure, in 2010. But more importantly, what's happening now in states like Montana and Idaho and Washington is that immigrants and other communities that are being scapegoated are under attack. And as the economy continues to wobble, we are seeing more and more anger being directed not just up at the government elites, but down at people who have very little ability to defend themselves. And so the Democrats' idea that let's stir up even more trouble and laugh as the Republicans get pulled to the right ignores the fact that, the families that I talked to are being harmed by both the Republican and the Democrat and the teabag movements.
And Chip Rowley, you have a piece coming out in the Progressive magazine next month, and in that you argue that centrist Democrats should stop trivializing right-wing populism. What do you mean by that?
Well, if you just say, look, they're all crazy, they're all nuts, we don't have to pay any attention to them, they're not real, that does several things. One is that it obscures this dynamic that's occurring that Lenny Zeskin explained so well, that there's a struggle going on in these right-wing movements right now, and the white supremacist organizers are trying to pull the teabag movement way towards more aggression and a more ideological position. But also, I talked to organizers who said when they try and reach out to white communities where they have in the past had some traction around issues like immigration or issues like racism or even organizing around the political economy and the environment, that they're getting doors slammed in their face because, people can hear the Democrats and I'm sorry, but the Keith Olbermanns and the Rachel Maddows making fun of their neighbors and them, and they don't want to hear from progressive organizers.
Chip, last year, the study that came out, or the report that came out of the Department of Homeland Security from Janet Napolitano, that got fiercely attacked by Republicans in Congress, so much so that she had to take it back, talking about the rise of and the danger of white extremism and nationalism in this country. Can you talk about what happened with that, the importance of that report, and then the pushback?
Sure, and first I'll bet you a $25 donation to Democracy Now! That you can't go through the rest of the program without using the word extremism. I hope you win. Look, the problem with the report is exactly that. The report, 50% of it was completely accurate about the recruiting on the right in the military and the white supremacists stealing supplies. All of that was accurate. But the report went on to claim that the evidence that there was a need for government, surveillance and monitoring and intervention was based on ideological concerns. So, I may not agree with libertarians, but most of them aren't breaking the law. I don't agree with right-wing populists, but most of them aren't breaking the law. So the report was actually quite valuable until it started to conflate political ideas with potentials for violence. And we see Joe Lieberman and his committee talking about this with, homegrown radicalization and violent extremism. These are terms used by the center to marginalize dissident on both the left and the right.
And can you talk about the impact of the right-wing media, figures like Glenn Beck, and what this does?
Sure. I mean, what people like Glenn Beck and Lou Dobbs do is they provoke an even angrier response. They whip up this anger, but they point it towards scapegoats. And the scapegoats are overwhelmingly not just liberals, but people on the left, community organizers, Mexican immigrants, Muslims, all kinds of folks that are out in Middle America, and some of their angry neighbors are looking at them as the cause of this problem with our society and with our economy. So what you have is this problem here with Sarah Robinson and David Nyward have talked about, especially the book Eliminationists, where once you have a right-wing populist movement, and you have political figures in the Republican Party embracing it and saying they're the real patriots, and you have media demagogues whipping up more and more anger, this is a very volatile mix. It is, in fact, without using the term incorrectly, the mix that turns a right-wing populist movement into a neo-fascist movement. And the political theory now about fascism is that it's a right-wing populist ultranationalist movement that turns into a more militant and aggressive mode. Now that's, it's not going to happen here. You're not going to have a mass fascist movement. But along the way, this anger being focused on scapegoats by the Glenn Becks and the Lou Dobbs and the O'Reillys leads some people to decide to beat up their neighbors, and it leads others to decide to go out and kill their neighbors, and that's already happened.
Of course, Lou Dobbs is no longer on television, though he could run for national office, something that's been floated there. Then you have David Duke.
That's like saying a zombie is going to stay dead.
That's like what, Chip?
That's like saying a zombie is going to stay dead.
You have David Duke famously saying that if Obama were elected, of course this was before Obama was elected president, it would be a, quote, visual aid to white Americans. How have things changed in this year of the Obama presidency?
Well, we've gotten back to this it's basically that with such a large right-wing populist movement already being woven around these white nationalist themes, it's pulling the Republican Party to the right and towards, frankly, a more racist stance. But it's also providing an opportunity for the organized white supremacist movement to pull people out of the right-wing populist movement, the teabag and town hall movement, and pull them into a more aggressive, more racist, a more xenophobic, more anti-Muslim, and in many cases anti-gay and anti-abortion provider kind of anger. And that is happening on both sides of this right-wing populist movement. The Republicans are being pulled to the right, and the white supremacist organizers are having a heyday of organizing people out of the right-wing populist movement into this militant, aggressive, and frankly, right-wing revolutionary stance.
And what do you think is the best way to answer it, Chip Burley?
Well, I think that if you're looking at it in terms of a society, people need to stand up and say, this is way out of control. That whenever you have this kind of anger and demonization and scapegoating, it's very toxic to democracy. And I wrote a report called Toxic to Democracy to explain how that works. The other thing is that Democrats really have to stop this snide and smug and arrogant, haha, let's laugh at the rednecks and rubes stance, because first of all, the political right has out-organized centrist Democrats repeatedly since 1980, so I have no idea why they're laughing on the Democratic Party side. And the other thing, these inside the Beltway spin doctors who say, it's okay to call them the radical religious right, the political extremists, they're crazy. This whole theory that came out of the 50s and 60s that these people are psychologically maladjusted has been repudiated in social science. So, there are people being pulled into the right-wing populist and white supremacist movement that skillful progressive organizers and labor organizers could be bringing into a multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition.
Chip Burley, we're going to have to leave it there. We thank you very much for being with us. Senior analyst at Political Research Associates, co-author of Right-Wing Populism in America, Too Close for Comfort. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we're going to Gaza. Stay with us.